25 years ago, and just a few feet behind me, an unarmed Indigenous man was shot and killed by police. Anthony Dudley George was part of a group of land defenders, as they've come to be known, trying to reclaim land that was taken from their parents, grandparents, and ancestors. Now, they were ultimately successful, but not before police shot a teenager, beat a council member to near death, and Dudley lost his life. Over the next several days, we'll be sharing stories with you about what has and hasn't changed at Ajudanu, and why the land so many people fought so hard to reclaim remains dangerous and even deadly. In 1942, the Canadian government offered the Chippewa of Kettle and Stony Point $15 an acre so they could build a military training camp on the land most commonly known as Stony Point. When their offer was refused, the government expropriated the land.
Apparently under the War Measures Act that you can do that. So they did it, but they did promise us that they were going to give it back when they no longer needed it.
Carol Peltier is believed to be the last person born here before the military took over. Her family and a dozen others were forced to relocate to the other side of the reserve.
It was traumatic because they spent all their life there. You know, they were taken right, they were just told, you got to get out. And there was still, like the army moved in. Like, they didn't wait for us to move out, they moved in.
Peltier comes from a medicine-gathering family.
Number one is burdock root.
Her skills come from ancestors who practiced in the area of Stony Point, the area that was seized by the military, forcing her to learn her craft outside of ancestral grounds.
It was much harder because people had their set land already, and we just had to be placed wherever they wanted to place us, and a lot of times it was swampland or not very desirable land.
The land we had was taken from us. We had fish, we had deer, we had all kinds of things to make us live without anybody's help, and they took that away.
It was so valuable, so sacred to us that we did not want to give that up. And the people that are there now, the people that lost that land, lost that connection, that understand the importance of having our land, are not willing to give that up.
The promise to return the land after the war was broken, and the training camp remained. In the 1990s, protesters moved on to the camp, and in 1995, they also entered nearby Ipperwash Provincial Park, where they had an ancestral burial ground. Dudley George was one of those protesting in the park when police descended.
The way they came here, with what they had, I don't even see the OPP do that to anyone. Come in with armored personnel carriers, all brand new goods, to make sure they did the job they were to do.
That job was to clear the park, which they did, but only after beating a council member to near death, shooting at teenagers driving a school bus, and shooting and killing unarmed Dudley George.
You have to take a stand. Even if it costs you, you still got to do it. Dudley's a prime example of it, eh?
What happened down there when they blockaded, if that had never happened, I doubt that this would be dealt with yet.
Dudley is our hero, so we could all be here.
Lacey George is one of about 60 people who now live in the former army barracks.
I wouldn't have the home that I have. I wouldn't have the husband that I have. My kids wouldn't have the life that they had or have right now if I didn't up and move down here.
And while members of Kettle and Stony Point do live here, this land is technically still not theirs. 50 years of military occupation has left the land filled with dirty water, contaminated soil, and fields littered with unexploded bombs. Now, until the military cleans it up, it will not officially be handed over to its rightful owners. Tomorrow on City News, we take a look at the state of the land and what it's like to live here surrounded by dangers, and why people choose to stay.